Hi, this is Anna Hack from Green Talk, and today we have Lynn Schwartz on the podcast and video cast today, and he's going to go through with us and explain to me, because I'm having a lot of trouble with this, the real myths and the truths about LEDs for commercial and residential. Lynn is the founder of LPS Green Technologies, and he's been kind enough to be talking to me offline for the last couple hours or week about all the different marketing hype, and I explained to Lynn, even though I know a lot about LEDs, there's such marketing hype that I really don't know what's fact or fiction. So Lynn, tell me a little bit about your company first.
LPS Green Technologies, we're a manufacturer's rep and a consulting company, and we do LEDs and LEDs only. So we've existed for about 3.5 years. The first 2 years it was difficult because there was not much to sell. Over the last year and a half, we've developed a lot of products, and we do a lot of consulting for people, and we help people make proper decisions when they're buying their products.
So you can understand my dilemma, especially in the residential area with all the marketing hype. You think that these are the best things next to chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, absolutely. There's a reason those PR people get paid a lot of money. They make LEDs look like they're the greatest thing, and whether they are or aren't, they're trying to get out there and sell them. And the LED industry is developing, but it is still not what we would call saturating the market by any means. So there are certain things that make selling LEDs difficult, and there's certain things that make buying LEDs difficult. And hopefully we can help clear that up.
Now, let's go through. Here I am, Ms. Consumer. I walk into Home Depot. I see my Philips, I see my, GE, I see my lighting science bulbs right on the road, on the rack, and I'm excited beyond belief, and I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. So what would you advise, Ms. Consumer here? What's things that I need to look for when I'm picking up an LED bulb?
Well, the first thing is you have to understand a little bit about an LED. In an LED, the number one enemy of an LED is heat. So if you talk to people who sell LEDs, know anything about LEDs, they're always going to be talking about the heat sink. And the heat sink is this kind of radiator-looking thing on the side of an LED. And everybody's going to look at that and go, those things are kind of cool looking. Well, they serve a huge purpose. The radiators bring the heat that's on the inside of that LED, where the heat is generated in order to make it bright, and they bring it to the outside. So the first thing you have to look at is an LED, is the heat sink. The second thing you're going to be concerned with is, does the thing look good? If it looks cheap, it probably is cheap. So when you're going to one of the big box stores, they're selling their products based on price point. They're not going to sell their products based on the world's greatest quality standard. Even Philips, which has wonderful products, when you start selling LEDs to the general public, people don't want to spend $50, $60 if they can spend $40. And if you're selling an LED light bulb like this one, where you've got something that is looks kind of like a light bulb, and it's dimmable, see, we can even dim them, and you're selling that for, let's say, $40, and you can buy a regular light bulb for 50 cents, it's a very difficult sell. So as soon as you walk into a big box store, you're going to have problems. Usually the place that you find the higher quality LEDs are going to be like the little lighting shops, where people are more concerned with selling quality and building a relationship than with the big box stores. But forget all that. If you're going to sit there and walk into a big store, look at the heat sink, look and see if it looks cheap, because if it looks cheap, it probably is cheap. And then look and see what kind of light colors they're offering. Light colors measured in degrees Kelvin. So when you look on the box and you see something that says 2700K or 3000K, that's telling you the light color. Warm white should be in that 2700 to 3000. If they're showing you a warm white, not telling you what color it is, you need to run away, because you might take a warm white and they'll say, well, our warm white's 3500K. Well, that's a very white, almost a blue white. So you have to be very careful when you're buying things and not get caught up in the hype of what they're trying to push you on.
Now, if the one thing that because I actually did an article on Green Talk about lighting science. I got to compare their bulbs. They are being sold at Home Depot, and I happened to like. I mean, it told you right on the package it was halogen like, so you knew it was going to be a bright white, and I
Hmm.
happened to like that. And I thought, though, maybe I can get away with less wattage because it's got that bright light, and perceptually, it looks brighter to me.
Hmm.
So there you can't really do apples to apples, and that's what's concerning me. Like people like they say, oh, it's 65K ish, whatever the heck that means. So how do you know? Let's say I'm replacing a hi hat that's a 65 watt hi hat. It's a an R30.
Uh-huh.
What do I do when I walk into the big box? Do I pick up an incandescent light and then bring it over and take a look at the facts compared to the LED and see if they're similar? What do I do?
Well, there's different light colors. So just in a 20-second deal of light colors, if you were to take like the old Smitty did when he was making horseshoes and put that iron in a fire, as the iron heats up, it starts at red hot, then yellow hot, white hot, blue hot. So that's the degrees Kelvin. That's when that iron hit that temperature, the color of that iron is what we're reflecting in light color. So it kind of clears up when you're looking at something and you see warm white. What does that mean? So you have to determine, do you want something to look more daylight, which is going to be a cool white, kind of bluish white light? Do you want something to be white white, or do you want it to be a warm white? Also with LEDs, they're very directional. So we have to work to make an LED spread out its beam angle. So we'll start out with something that's maybe very narrow, and we work to make it a flood. So you have to be alert when you go to the big box store. Do you want a flood or do you want a spot? A typical spot would be, let's say, 15 or 25 degree beam angle. 40 is going to be a small flood, but you can call it a flood. Well, on an 8-foot ceiling, if you put a 40-degree beam angle LED, it's going to cause spotting in your room, which is okay if you like that, but you just need to know what you're getting. So all the little different things when you're going and you're looking at an LED, you can look at the box of a typical halogen and it's going to say spot or flood, and you're not going to really be able to take that and put it into an LED. So the important things for LEDs is what kind of light color, and it's not going to match traditional light color. A warm LED, if you like that real yellow kind of deep, heavy color, very, very warm light color, you're going to have a hard time finding that in an LED. LED is like taking a television and making it an HD TV. The light's going to be cleaner, crisper, it's going to have more white tones, it's not going to have ultraviolet or infrared, it doesn't have a lot of the undertones of other colors. It's a very specific color. So when you look at something like that warm one that I was showing you, and you're looking at this warm white's not going to be a yellow white. It's going to have a lot of red tones to it. So you need to understand when you're buying them that you're not going to be getting the exact same thing. Of course, I happen to believe that that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think you can look at an LED and think that I'm actually going to be buying a better, cleaner, crisper light. But you just need to be aware of what you're getting. So your light colors are not going to match exactly to a halogen or an incandescent any more than the halogen matches exactly to the incandescent.
But you mentioned something about spotting and angle, the 40-degree angle,
Uh-huh.
and that's one of the concerns that I have because you have your A lamps, which is the bulbs that people put in their lamps, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have your hi hats, and
Mm-hmm.
they're two totally different type of lighting. And then how do you know that there is spotting? Do you look up and see spots? I mean, what does that mean? That it causes spottings?
It's what I would call light pooling in your room. So if you want a flood look where everything is lit uniformly, you need to make sure that the beam angle on your LED is a 60 or 80. So you need to see the numbers. Okay, you can't just go by. You would used to go and you'd buy a flood, and the flood kind of flooded everything fine. And if you bought a spot, it would be a spot. And then if you really wanted a narrow spot to highlight something, you had to kind of look to find that particular bulb. Bulbs, by their very nature, the incandescent, the halogens, by their very nature, are flood-like because they're throwing light everywhere. And then you work to make them more spotty. LEDs are just the opposite. By their very nature, they will be a single spot. And then we work by using a prismatic lens, and a prismatic lens is like this. If you can see that lens, and you can see all the little dots in that lens, we're actually taking that beam angle and trying to throw that beam angle out.
Now, one thing that I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one thing that you pointed out about all these information tips, are they always on the package? Because I know that there also is, is it SSL Quality Advocates, where they have like I call them the nutrition facts, the lighting facts, the lighting facts that you actually see on the packages. That's not on everything.
Well, and if it's not, then you need to really question whether you want to buy that product. Just to give you an example, one of the companies that I sell for has 1,600 part numbers in a par 30 alone. This is a par 38. When we talk about par 38s, it's the face is measured in eighths of an inch. So that's 38 eighths, or what is that, 4 3/4 inches across. So when we're doing that, we have 1,600 part numbers in this one alone in a par 38. So you've got to be very specific what you want. It's not just the kind of thing that you go to the store and you buy a regular incandescent bulb. That's why when we talk about LEDs, we can talk about how light can actually be better for you. So that, let's say you're in your kitchen, we can make a whiter light for your kitchen and your bathroom so that things are much brighter, and then we make a warmer light that has a lot of red tones to it for the rest of your house so that your house becomes very comfortable. What happens when you take those red tones, when you take a white with the little yellow tones and red tones, is it makes the colors come out in your house more. And it makes everything pop. So it's a different kind of way of looking at things, just like when you look at an HD TV, the movie stars, all of a sudden you see whether or not they have blemishes, whether they look good, whether they're wearing a lot of makeup. You can see things you don't see in regular TV. Some people like that, some people don't. But the vast majority of people are moving in that direction. So it's the same kind of thing in lighting. A lot of people liked albums because they like that old crackly sound, and they still buy albums. But we went from albums to cassettes to CDs, now we're in MP3 players, and the sound quality has gotten clearer and cleaner, and that's the same thing what LEDs are going to do. When you go to electronic lighting, which is what an LED is, it's a semiconductor chip. So we're actually creating light electronically. It's going to be a cleaner, clearer, crisper light. So as a consumer, if you're looking for something to be exactly like what you used to get, you're not going to get that. There are a few companies, Philips, Cree, they're making a very yellow light. There's a competition that is trying to get people to see how close can you get to be an incandescent light. I personally think that's a funny thing, because why would I want to take a new technology and try and make it look like something old? I don't want my house to look antique and sepia paper that looks like it's old and yellow. I want my house and the colors to look crisp and clean. And that's where we're headed in lighting. So even though a lot of people are trying to capture that old feel, I don't really think that's going to happen any more than you're going to put pops in the sound on a CD just so that you can get it to sound like the album.
But I'm just wondering, when you go back and you talk about how color's changing, how does a consumer know what wattage to get, like which type of bulb to get?
Well, a consumer, if it's on the packaging, look for the three important things you want to look at on the packaging. What is the beam angle? What is the warranty? And what is the color temperature? Okay? That way you can make an informed decision. Remember, the lower the color temperature, the more reddish, yellowish the light's going to be. And then the beam angle is going to tell you if it's going to be a spot or a flood. The higher the beam angle, the more flood it's going to be. And the warranty is going to tell you whether or not it's a decent product or not. If you're buying something with a 1 year warranty, there's a good chance that your product's going to last you a very short time compared to buying something with a 3 year warranty or a 5 year warranty. So those are the three basic simple things that you can see on a package. The next thing you do is when you take it home and you plug it in, when you put this in a fixture or you put it someplace and you leave it on for 30 minutes, this heat sink should be somewhere between 110 and 120 degrees. So the top isn't going to have the heat. The heat's going to be back here. So you unscrew it and you feel it and you go, wow, that kind of feels like it does when I get in my car. If that's happening, then that means your lamp has a good shot at lasting a long time. So those are very, very simple things for a consumer to do. If your heatsink is too cold or your heatsink is too hot, you put it back in the package, you take it back to the store, and you don't buy that product again.
Now, the also good thing is, like I talked about it, and we kind of skipped over it, was the I don't know if you've seen the lighting facts on a lot of products now at a lot of stores. It's kind of like nutritional facts, where it gives you all that information, and that they've actually voluntarily gotten these third party tested, the bulbs. Not everybody is doing this. It's on a if you want to do it type basis. And I was wondering if you thought that a bulb that has gone to that step, a company that's gone to that step to had it third party tested. How do you feel about that? I mean, do you know a little bit about the SSL Quality Advocates lighting facts?
I do. The interesting thing is the general consumer is not going to understand everything. And then things that are put on packages, unless they're certified by some person that says that is actually certified and guaranteed, yada, da, 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 you can put anything on a package. I've seen people put things on packages that say, my light is similar to, or it is a substitute for a 60 watt par 30 halogen. Okay, so you want to buy, you have that real pretty halogen that you like in your can, and it's giving you a lot of light, and you want to switch to LED, and we measure light in lumens, and then we measure brightness on surfaces in foot candles. So you've got this fairly bright 600 lumen halogen, and you want to get an LED, and you go and it says on the package, similar to a 60 watt halogen. You put it in and it's half as bright. And that's what happens in our industry. We, as a consumer, those three things that I told you about are extremely important. If something says it's equal to, then that usually means that you're buying something that has the same brightness, because they're actually saying this is the same brightness as this. So like this particular one is the same brightness as a 75 watt par 38, but it's not as bright as a 90 watt par 38. So those are the little things that you just have to find out. Going to a big box store is very, very difficult. Eventually, the products are going to be there. But I've seen the specs that it takes to sell to those companies. And I know what it takes to sell to those companies. And they're not selling based on quality. They're selling based on price. And if you bring it back, they just throw it in a big bin and return it to the LED company. And the LED company fixes it and resells it or sends it back to them or whatever. And you as a consumer don't know any different, and you're kind of getting the wrong end of the stick on that one. That's why when you're buying, if you're going to the smaller lighthouses and the lighting companies, they tend to have people there who are selling better products that can actually speak intelligently about what you're buying. And then if they can't, then they have someone like me that they call, and I can tell you how to speak intelligently and what to buy.
Now, another issue with there's actually two more issues is life. That's all across the board as well. You hear things like 20 to 50,000. Sometimes it's more than that. Again, you talked about warranty probably being your best red flag as to whether they're telling the truth about that as well. Is there any other way a consumer can check up on what is the true life or what should be the true life?
Not really. The only thing you can do as a consumer is, if you remember when I told you go ahead and plug it in and then feel that heat sink, that will give you the best chance to determine if the thing has a prayer to last longer. The LEDs themselves last forever. They'll eventually burn out over 50, 60,000 hours. That's not what goes out. So when you listen to people or you read the warranty and they say the LED will last 50,000 hours, well, that's true. But what they don't tell you is that the little transformer, what we're doing in an LED without trying to get too technical with you, is we're actually converting electricity from just general electricity that we use to 12-volt DC current. So we're taking, just like a computer does, where a computer will take down the amount of electricity so it doesn't burn it up and put too much electricity. We do the same thing with an LED. And when we do that, that's the thing that goes out. That's called a driver. And the drivers are what go out. And the drivers go out because there's too much heat that gets built up on the inside. So again, we go back to that heat sink. We're going to always end up going back to the heat sink. The easiest thing for the consumer to do to see if theirs is going to last is if that heat sink is kind of in that 110 to 120, so it's hot that you can barely hold it, but you can still hold it. You know what hot water feels like. It's that kind of hot. If it's not hot, one of two things is happening. Either the heat sink's not working, which happens, or the lamp itself is not very bright because they're not pushing energy through it. And if it's too hot, so that it burns your hand so much that you can't hold it, so it's 130, 140 degrees, then that itself is going to burn up the insides. So you need to be right in that 110 to 120 degrees, especially for residential use where the demands are not as stringent as commercial use. You test it at 30 minutes. So if you want to do your whole house, do one first. Take your time. There's not a rush. They're not going anywhere. So you buy one, take it home, put it in, see if it works. And if it works, then you know that that one's going to work for you. It's got a nice warranty. Let's say it has a 3-year warranty. That heat sink is the right temperature. Then you can kind of trust it. If any of those things go wrong, it's an electronic device. And you have to question, do you want to do it? You're closer to buying a stereo than you're buying a light bulb. So remember, you're buying an electronic device. You're not buying a light bulb. And you're not buying a halogen light, which is a gas. You're buying an LED. And that LED is a diode. That's what LED stands for, light emitting diode.
Now, you brought up something that was really got me thinking, because it's an electronic a device. How's it working now with people's switches? I mean, somebody may be living in a 1960s switch, a house with a switch that, you toggle up and down. What's going to happen with the LED? Does everybody have to, change up their switches?
The switches you don't. If you want to use dimming, you might have to. An LED dims at a much different rate than an incandescent bulb. The old switches literally would turn it on and turn it off through its wave. It's called a sine wave. But through that sine wave, it would literally turn it on and turn it off, and the element would stay lit through that cycle. Well, we don't have an element. You turn an LED on and off, and you end up getting flickering. So what we do is we actually have to dim them through a voltage drop. And the new dimmers, which is why we can do this, okay, so we can make it bright.
Yeah, Lynn, just bring it up a little bit higher for me. Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, and we can dim it down. All right, you can see it dim. We can do that with the new switches. We can't do that necessarily with old ones, but sometimes you can. The only way you're going to know is to actually experiment and see. If you can't, then all you have to do is replace your dimmer switch. And this particular company, Lutron, has come out with a new dimmer switch for CFLs and LEDs, and it costs you somewhere, let's say, roughly $20.
Now, is there a place where people can check and see if their dimmers are compatible?
I don't know how you can. I'd love to tell you, sure, it's easy, but the only thing you can do is just put one in and actually try it. That's what we do. There's no fancy way to do it because you never know. There's different kinds of dimmers, incandescent dimmers, which are kind of old ones. I have a dimmer in my office that is an old dimmer. It's about a 20-year-old dimmer, but it dims my lights just fine. There's magnetic dimmers, and then there's electronic dimmers. So it just depends on what we're trying to accomplish. And that's really where experimentation has to be there until the industry begins to catch up to the technology. So you have to remember, we have been using the same basic lighting sources for 50 years, 100 years. We've moved from an incandescent a little bit into the halogens, and now into the CFLs, those little compact fluorescent twirly lights. And now we're moving into electronic lighting. We've never done electronic lighting. So everything has to be compatible in those electronics. Just like when we started computers, all the softwares had to match. So if you had an Apple, you couldn't, your Microsoft Windows didn't match an Apple computer back then. But over time, my iPod works fine and my iPhone works fine with a Windows operating system. So it just took time to kind of get there. We will be there over the next 3, 4, 5 years, but we're very early on that curve.
But what is the government doing about any of the marketing heights? I know the Department of Energy has, their caliber testing. Are they clamping down on the marketing hypes? What are they doing?
Well, I think they're trying to. The problem with DOE and is the same problem that you get with architects and engineers. They usually run anywhere from 6 months to a year behind where technology has advanced to. So as a sales company or a marketing company, the stores are going to be pushing the technology long before the DOE or architects or engineers or any of those societies are going to be aware of where the technology is. So for an example, I sell LED tubes, and DOE can only test so many tubes. Some of them test well, some of them don't. The market has advanced in the tubes, but is the market there? No. Should you as a consumer go out and say, I'm going to throw away my 4-foot tube in my bathroom, my regular T8 fluorescent tube, and buy an LED? The answer is no. You shouldn't. It's not there yet. We're not at that point. But the DOE is probably 6 months to a year behind where the industry is. That's the thing about technology, is technology will always advance faster than the bodies can keep up with that advancing.
Now, you kind of now started into commercial a little bit, and that's a totally different animal, because usually I saw the LEDs in the commercial application way before I saw them in residential. And again, that again is like the Wild West. I mean, you've got everybody selling their product, thinking it's the best thing, and then you've got facility managers scratching their heads, going, "Oh my God, what do I do?" Because if you make the wrong decision, it's a costly decision.
That's right. You're stuck with it for many, many years, or you have to turn around and do the change. Let's say you take a look at this, and let's say this one, just for a number, costs.
Lynn, say what it is, because
this is a typical light bulb, an A19 typical light bulb in an LED. So it would be your normal light bulb that you would have, that you go to the store and you spend 50 cents for. This one will cost you, let's say, $40. Well, eventually this will pay for itself if you're in a residential use. But it might take you 4 or 5 or 6 years, because your traditional light, you're only using them, let's say, 2 hours a day. In a commercial setting, you're using this 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you're going to have a return on this one in a much shorter period than you are if you're doing a residential light. The same thing is true if you're doing a candelabra. If you've got a candelabra, this is a little candelabra light bulb. This is 2 watts compared to something that might be 25 to 40 watts. Eventually you'll get a use. But if you're only turning them on in your house when you have company sitting down at your dinner table, well, it will take you forever. But in a restaurant where they're going to have them on 60, 70 hours a week, your return on investment on this could be as low as 12 months or less. So when we start talking about commercial, the demands on a commercial light are much different than the demands on a residential light. A residential light basically is on anywhere from 2 to 4 hours a day. We all have kids. We know the kids come on and turn the lights on, and they seem to stay on all day. But realistically, the lights are only on for an hour to 2 hours in the morning and 2 to 3 hours maximum in the evening time. So you're talking about 4 to 5 hours a day, and not even constant. In commercial settings are on 16, 18 hours a day, sometimes 24 hours a day. And if you're doing that, you've got to have a product that is going to survive. That's, again, we go back to that heat sink. Can that heat sink manage the heat to get the heat out of the inside of that LED? So the same things we look at residential is the same thing we're going to look at in commercial. The difference is a commercial one is, you would never buy a commercial one at a big box store, because with those price points you might be able to get away with it in a residential setting because you're not going to use them all that often. But in a commercial setting, when you're turning them on and leaving them on all day, you're going to put those in and they're going to last you. I can't tell you how many times people tell me they burn out after 3 months. You start hearing things. This is 3 common complaints of LEDs. The color changes from whatever pretty color they have, and it changes to that blue-white color of an LED. They dim. I put them in and they were really bright, and after they've been in for 2 months, they dimmed. Or the third one is, I put them in and next thing I know, they went out. They only had them on for a month and they went out, and I thought they were supposed to last forever. Those are quality issues. That's what all those are related to, the heat sink. If you don't have a heat sink that can manage the heat, then all the little technical aspects that go into an LED, those things begin to burn up, and they will literally overheat in no time at all. The inside of this light, the inside is 249 degrees. That's where that connection, that's where we get that brightness. And we have to dissipate that 249 degrees. If not, then that heat builds up, and next thing you know, you have problems with your LED.
Right, but let's go back to commercial a second with facility managers. I know we talked about the tubes really not being there, and that's generally what you see in most office buildings. You see the T8s, the T5s, the long linear tubes, and you may see your occasional bulb here, hi-hat there type of thing. They still have the you see them in the airports, those hi-hats with the reflective inside.
Mm-hmm.
What are you advising your clients in the way of what to swap out and what not to swap out?
Well, I always tell people the best bang for the buck is the MR16. And you'll see those mainly in restaurants, lighting artwork in office buildings. The MR16 is the best bang for the buck.
Tell me a little bit about, do you have an MR16 with you?
I do. I'm going to have to step away just for a second, and I'll be right back. I'll show you one right here.
Okay. No problem.
Okay. The MR16...
Lynn, is the MR16 a real directional light?
Not necessarily. It can be. These can go anywhere from 10 degrees to 50 degrees. So because they're very small, even the halogen MR16s are going to have a smaller light pattern. It's only 2 inches across. So if it's only 2 inches across, it can only give you so much light. And not only that, but it only has so much power. Okay, this is 4 watts. You have in LEDs, people will sell an MR16 anywhere from 3 watts to, I've seen them as big as Philips is a 10 watt now. The wattage doesn't necessarily tell you how bright they are, but it gives you kind of an idea how bright they are. When you look at that and you see the bi-pin, can you see those 2 pins? These are the little plug-in ones that you see in landscape lighting. When you go to Home Depot or one of the other places and you buy Malibu lighting, and it's lighting your house or lighting your plants, and you plug them in and you put those little halogens in, and they last about, I don't know, maybe 3 months if you're lucky, and then they burn out and you have to replace them. You can take that and put this little LED in, and this one will last about 40,000 hours. It's warranted for 3 years, and you can replace those in those fixtures with an LED. That's what makes it the best bang for the buck. So you're changing something that's 40, 50 watts, 35 watts with 4 watts, and because they've got 3-year warranties, they're going to last a very long time, where a typical incandescent halogen light, MR16, is only going to last you maybe, if you're lucky, 2,000 hours.
But that actually looks like a light you might see in retail as well, right?
You don't see those as much in retail. You do, but they're usually not big enough, bright enough for retail.
Okay.
You can see them. They're going to use them to highlight things, but usually you're going to see a PAR 20, which is more like this kind of thing with this kind of base. That's called an Edison base. You're going to see it with that kind of typical screw-in base, just instead of being this big, which is 4 3/4. A PAR 20 is going to be 2.5 inches.
And with the PAR 20, do you think they're there yet for LEDs?
Oh yeah, any of the the MR16 is your best bang for the buck. Exterior lighting. If you're doing commercials and you're doing parking lot lighting, you're doing lighting what we call wall packs, which are lights on the sides of buildings that shoot out and light sidewalks and light parking lots also. That lighting is your second most cost effective. It usually takes, let's say, a 3-year to 4-year return on investment. But those are the kinds of lights, because they're so big, the heat sinks are built where they can actually last anywhere from 10 years to 20 years. And if you're up in the northern climates, they can last 20 to 25 years. In the Southwest, where, in Texas, we expect them to go anywhere from, let's say, 12 to 15 years. And they're paying off in 3 to 4 years. So if you look at the numbers, that's a great payoff. The next thing is the PAR lamps, which are all these, the PAR 20s, the PAR 30s, the PAR 38s. These are going to give you a lot of brightness. They're going to usually
Lynn, for my podcasters, explain what a PAR lamp is.
Oh, a PAR is, the old things that used to have the curved lenses, like a parabolic lens?
It's kind of like the light that you would use for a hi-hat.
That's right.
Okay.
It's the typical spots and floods, the things that you put on the outside of your house to light the outside of the house. Those are PAR lamps.
Okay.
Okay. Those have a nice payoff, 3 to 4 times also. Usually your return on investment in a commercial setting is going to be anywhere from 12 to 16 months. Okay, so we've gone to those, but those are only going to last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. Some of them ours have 3-year warranties. The different companies I sell, there are some out there that have 5-year warranties. You have to read the fine print, but basically those have a good return. The last thing that you would want to change out is a T8 tube. The tubes, a fluorescent tube is a very efficient, very productive light. Unless light quality matters to you, okay? Which means that a fluorescent tube, like my particular eyes, I don't see well with fluorescent tubes. I have LEDs in my office. I no longer need to read. I no longer need reading glasses.
Are you serious?
Wow.
Wow.
I can read small print without reading glasses. And if I'm out of my office for about 3 days, my eyes begin to revert, where I have to have reading glasses again.
Wow, that's worth it right there.
I know. Believe me.
For people who are listening that don't understand this, like when you turn 40, your eyes go downhill, and they go downhill quick. So for you guys that are over, under the age of 40, yeah, you got something to look forward to.
Wait till they get grandchildren,
right?
and
then your eyes really go. But
right.
but that's really good to know. But so you're still an advocate of the T8 bulb right now.
I think so. There are only 3 conditions that I would say an LED is a better solution than a T8 tube. The first is in a very cold environment. So if you're a T8 tube, a fluorescent T8 tube needs energy or heat to cause the mercury atoms that are on the inside of that tube to become excited, and they get very excited and they bounce off the phosphor that's coated on the inside, and they create a glow. And that's what you have to generate that heat in order to do that. An LED, our enemy is heat, so we actually like the cold. So in refrigeration casing, an LED is a wonderful option compared to a fluorescent tube. The second one is an LED is going to last longer than, I should say, a good LED tube is going to last longer than a fluorescent tube. So if it costs you a lot of money, if you have a very difficult light to change, and it costs you a lot of money to change that light, and just one changing would buy the LEDs, then that makes it a good option. And then the third option is in new construction where you can actually, an LED tube, I can replace 4 fluorescent tubes with 2 LED tubes. So if I'm at a point where I can actually put up 3 LED tubes and space them, where I can use a few less fixtures, then that's a pretty good use of an LED tube. The same thing's true on, they now have LED, what's called LED 2x4 troffers, where you can buy an LED 2x4 lay-in that is about the same size as doing a 2x4, well, 4 fluorescent tubes, and you can put that in.
Is there any blind spots to that, though? That dark spot when you look up?
Not really. Not really. The technology's gotten pretty good on those. Cree makes a really, really nice one. They just came out with one that is probably the nicest one I've seen. We've gone to some light panels, so it's a more uniform light, not as bright as the tubes. It's more of a, well, I don't. Do you remember? Well, you may not remember the old dance floors that used to light up.
Yes.
Okay, those are light panels. So we've gone to more of a light panel look instead of doing just 2x4 troffers. And it's a nicer light. It's a glowy kind of pretty light.
Oh, so really nice for restaurants.
Really nice for restaurants. So the LEDs are moving in that direction. But cost-wise, it's a difficult thing because it costs you, if in a commercial setting, they can buy a 4-foot fluorescent tube that's going to last them, well, if they turn them on and off, it might last them 10 to 20,000 hours, turning it on and off. If they just leave it on all the time, it'll last them 30,000 hours for like $2 to $3. So, you know, that's a hard thing to sit there and say, well, spend $60 on an LED tube when you can replace a fluorescent tube for $3.
Do you see that? Do you see that in a couple years being more like the same price, or?
I think it's getting there. I'm not really convinced that it's there yet. I don't know that it's going to ever really get there because the fluorescent technology is really good. The only problem with fluorescent technology is you're using mercury. So, you know, the green part of me, the touchy-feely part of me says, gosh, I don't really want to add more mercury to the environment than that's already there.
And then, you know, a lot of companies don't even, you know, they throw them in the trash. They don't even bother to send them in a box back to where they're supposed to.
Well, most of the companies are at least the big companies are having to recycle those
Right.
now because
It's the smaller companies that aren't.
that's right. And it, you know, let's be realistic. If you live in your house and you have fluorescent tubes in your bathroom, which a lot of people still have old fluorescent tube fixtures in their bathrooms, and that burns out, you take it, you throw it in the dumpster, and you go about your life. All those little CFLs have mercury in them, minuscule amounts of mercury, but when they go out, they still have mercury. And what do you do with it? Do you put it in a bag, and do you take it over to a recycler and do all that? No, people take them, they throw them in the dumpster. So our landfills, if the world went to little mercury-filled tubes and CFLs and all those things, our landfills would have heavy metal considerations, and our groundwater would become an issue. I don't think it's going to get there just because I don't think people like the CFL light. I don't. I have them in my house. I don't have my whole house in LED. But where I use light a lot and where I have things that burn out, I use LED. And
Then
and
before I forget, you mentioned something before about CF the tubes when you turn them on and off with the fluorescence, how it shortens their life.
uh-huh.
When you have, let's say in a hotel application, when you're because that's one place people don't want them in the bathrooms. One, look, they don't like the look of fluorescence in a bathroom, and secondly, it's such a short time that people are turning them off. If you turn them off and on an LED as often as you do like in a hotel situation with bathrooms, is that going to shorten its life, or is it is what it is, it doesn't matter?
Well, I not only does it not matter, I can show you in real life use how you know it doesn't matter. You know the street lights starting and stopping, the red, yellow, greens. If you look at them, you'll notice those are
Oh,
LEDs.
you're right.
Most okay. If you look at people's tail lights and you see those dots, all the in my day when I was growing up, we had bulbs, and you would actually have to change those bulbs constantly. Now with the LED lights, they basically never burn out, and they go on and off all day long. They're brake lights, and you'll see them um, on computers. All the little LEDs, those are LEDs that light computers. The lights never go out. You turn them on and off all the time; they never go out. So you can see in everyday use, it doesn't bother an LED. It that is not an issue for us. We always come back to the heat issue. You can't put an LED over your oven. You can't put an LED in a rendering plant unless you are really, really, really comfortable with how that LED can dissipate the heat. There are functions where LEDs just aren't going to work well. There's a company that put LEDs, they did a retrofit for a large chain, convenience store chain. And up north and on the West Coast, they're fine. But they're having huge problems in Texas and Nevada because they're not lasting very long. They're actually going out after a year or less, and they're supposed to last 3, 4, 5 years. And the reason they are is because they can't manage that heat. So everything you see related to an LED, every problem you have is always going to be related to managing that heat. It's what causes color change. It's what causes everything. Um, so that's why everybody who sells LEDs always talks about their heat sinks, ad nauseum, I might add.
Yeah, I can tell you that because when I go to Light Fair, which is one of the biggest shows for commercial lighting, it's like my heat sink, my heat sink, my heat sink. I get you.
That's
But the other issue that I have also with commercial is it goes back to the same thing. Like when I go to Light Fair, God, there must be 300 companies plus selling, look at my LED, and I know that you say that there's ways that a facility manager can test by taking one and testing, but what is another way? I mean, they're gonna, it boggles their mind. What's another way that a facility manager could be more comfortable about this decision of going LED? Is there like a society of designers that belong to something, or like where's they're going to want to go to a professional?
well, I'd love to tell you that there is, and I'd love to tell you that the governing bodies have all the answers. There is testing on them. There's test reports, LM79. There's UL. All the different things that test things. You can see certificates of conformity. There's ISO 9000, 9001, which talk about how the company operates. There's Energy Star and Energy Star Partners. There's all these different things. But I've seen really, really bad products that are very certified. And ultimately, when you walk around Light Fair, if you happen to be going in a week or 2 weeks, I guess, the first thing you do is exactly the same thing I told the consumer to do, and that's fill the heat sinks. Walk around, fill the heat sinks. A lot of people will have lights and they say, this is brighter than anything you've ever seen. You'll fill the heat sink and they will be smoking hot. And you'll go, wow, how do you manage the heat? And then they'll tell you some cock and bull story that you go, wow, that's great, and I've heard it. I mean, I sell these things. I know what people what works and what doesn't. Physics is physics. The reason that there's this magic number, the magic number is based on solder reflows at 253 degrees. The solder that most of the people use to make their LEDs. Cree, which is a particular manufacturer, has one of their chips that actually reflows at 260 degrees. But that's why we have these magic numbers. That's why we want the heat sink to be a certain temperature. That's what we're trying to do, is to remove enough heat out of the center so that we don't build that thing up to 250, 260 degrees so that the solder begins to reflow, or it gets so hot that it burns the phosphor prematurely that we put to create the colors and all these other little technical things. So there's a reason that we do that. That's all physics. Physics doesn't change just because somebody wants it to. So you have to understand when you're looking at them that if the heat sinks aren't where they should be, then that's a huge red flag. So that's the number one thing we always come to. Then we always look at warranty. What kind of company is it? Is it a legit company? I know a story, which I think is one of the funniest stories, which is so typical of the LED industry, which will scare the average consumer and facilities manager to death. There's we know of a guy who sold a million of these. It was a Chinese company. He sold a million of them. He collected his money. They had 3-year warranties. He collected his money. He shut the doors, and he opened up a block down the street under a different name. So who warrants that? Okay. So it's very important that you know the company you're buying from. There's a reason that the big three are able to compete the way they're able to compete. They're very strong companies, been around. The particular company that I represent is a very strong company. It's actually been in the semiconductor business since 1998. So, and it started producing its first LED in 2007, long before the big boys actually got into the business. We're working on 6th and 7th generation lighting. A lot of other people are only working on 1st and 2nd and 3rd generation lighting.
So these are good. These are actually good questions to ask.
That's right. That's absolutely correct.
You know, it's how long you've been in business, what level of where you are on your generations.
What kind of certification do you have? Are you UL? UL lets you know whether or not electronically the light has a chance to burn up or burn up your store. Do you have certain certifications? What kind of certifications do you have? That doesn't necessarily guarantee something that is going to be successful. But I will tell you that if you don't have certifications, that there is a better chance that it won't be successful. So I'd rather have the certifications and take my chances that way.
Now, Lynn,
Deal with reputable people.
the last question I have is we haven't touched upon it with commercial, is parking lots, outside parking lots, and high bay applications. How do you feel about that with LEDs right now?
Well, I think that's a wonderful application.
What about retro?
That was my second best application. I think doing street lighting. You have to understand, in Texas, our kilowatt hours commercially are around 6 cents a kilowatt. So we have a much different
cheap
standard than you would up there.
Yes, cheap.
Yeah, it's very cheap. I renewed at my house yesterday at 8.9 cents a kilowatt in my house, residentially. Most places across the country are facing 10 to 20 cents, some as high as mid-20s, residentially and commercially too. So it's a much different thing. So we sell based on longevity as well as energy savings. So when you're buying lights for parking structure lighting, which is parking garages, parking lots, things like that, you need to know that you're buying a good quality product. There are a lot of studies that have been out. You can go online and you can look, go look at the, you can Google parking structure lighting and just look at street lighting. Ann Arbor has changed all their pole lightings out. Alexandria is doing it. I recently sold 3 to a city here for them to test. We're testing them all over the Southwest. There's one particular line I have has 7-year warranties. Most people have 5-year warranties. if you can't get a 5-year warranty on your product to do exterior lighting, you need to walk away, period.
Now, Lynn, are you talking about when you're are you retrofitting? Are you just like taking out the head of the light, or are you actually taking out the whole pole and everything with it?
No, you can keep the pole. You have to change the fixture. The good quality lighting to try and do a retrofit on a typical parking lot light or a street light, that heat sink is not built to that structure. Okay, so you have a risk. The chance of it surviving is not as good. When we do it, we would literally remove, let's say we're doing a parking lot with, those typical, what we would call a shoebox, just a
Yes.
square.
Yeah.
Okay. When we're changing a shoebox, we would leave the pole, we would pull off the arm and the fixture and replace it with our arm and fixture. And you just wire it right in. The nice thing is we have our little drivers, our transformers are built into the fixture. The same thing is true on pretty much anything I sell. Those are what we call the drivers. Those are all built into the fixture, so you don't have to worry about rewiring. We're using so much less wattage that you don't have to worry about trying. It's a perfect use if you have, let's say, you've expanded your parking lot and you don't want to run a whole new line out to that new parking lot. You can literally retrofit everything. Your wattage drops and you don't even have to worry about going all the way back to the board. You can just tie on to what we have.
And again, is that same, 20,000 to 50,000 life?
Those are very long. Those actually, with a 7-year warranty, we're expecting that one to go anywhere from 65 to 75,000 hours in our climate.
Wow.
And you have to remember we have 105-degree summer days when those lights come on. It's not how hot it is during the day. It's how hot is that fixture when those lights come on.
Oh.
Well, in Dallas, at 10 o'clock at night during the summer, you guys are very appreciative that you're not down here because it's still over 100 degrees when those come on. So your fixture's somewhere around 122 degrees. If you've got that baking in the heat, it has not had a chance to cool down with the humidity and the heat. Miami has the worst environment in the country for exterior lighting. So if you can make it to Miami standards, then you have a much different thing. I would never, I have companies ask me all the time, would you be interested in selling a retrofit to a street light or a parking lot light? My answer is no. And I wouldn't even do it up north because I don't trust that the retrofits in those fixtures will last long enough to actually justify changing the existing lighting. So they have to have an ROI or a return on investment. It's nice to be touchy-feely when we do these things and do it out of our heart, but businesses make decisions based on economics, not based on touchy-feely. You may do it and include the touchy-feely part and market that you're all green, but if they don't have a return on investment, it's not a smart move. So when we're doing wall packs and all that lighting, we're actually changing the actual fixtures out themselves.
Now, Lynn, I wanted to, because, some people might be saying that what you do is more selling than consulting, but when we talked earlier, you're really a consultant that has chosen to put things into your stable that you really like. Am I correct?
That's right.
So it's not, I know that people say, oh, no, he sells certain products, but I just wanted to clarify that it's, you've always been really a consultant and then you've just decided to include things in your stable that you really trust.
That's right. I mean, I will go into companies and tell them, don't buy my products. Go buy this product. Go buy a fluorescent, just like I did in this podcast. I'm somewhat of an LED evangelist because I think that LEDs are the future of lighting. And I think that we are very early on in that process. But am I going to go and tell you you have to buy an LED? No. As a matter of fact, my neighbor just this morning wanted to buy LEDs, and I told him no. And you asked me about a product earlier, and I sent you what they're actually talking about and showed you that they have no return on investment. It would cost you money to use their product. And here everybody thinks LED is going to save them a lot of money, and yet it would cost money to use that product. So I'm not about selling LEDs, and I'm not about selling. I'm about marketing and selling a company, not a company, a product line called LED that makes sense for individuals. And if it doesn't make sense, we don't sell it. And that it doesn't make sense in everything. The price points and the energy levels don't always make sense. If I was in Baltimore, I'd switch over in a second. If I was in Hawaii, no doubt would I go to LEDs. Then you have to be, if your energy rates are running anywhere from 10 cents and higher, LEDs are a very, very good option. When your energy rates are under 10 cents, you have to really find a product that's going to last a long time. That's what I sell, because otherwise I couldn't sell it.
Right,
But
right. And with a lot of electrical aggregation now, people are getting underneath that 10 cents. Like I know,
yeah,
like up here, we're getting under that 10 cents because you're aggregating. So,
absolutely.
which makes
So
it
then you have to look at quality.
right.
You've got to make a quality-based decision. If you always remember that you're buying electronic devices, um, I don't mean a shot at Radio Shack or Realistic, but if I was buying a stereo for my son's room and he was a teenager, maybe 10 years old or 12 years old or 13 years old, and a young kid, his first stereo, I might go to Radio Shack and buy a Realistic and put it in his room, and he'll have the greatest stereo. He'll be thrilled. It's much better than the radio he has. But if I'm doing a sound for a building, I'm not going to buy that kind of sound system. I've got to go spend money and buy a sound system. So if you buy something cheap, you get cheap sound. If you buy a bad LED, you get bad light. So you just have to understand that when you're making these decisions, you're buying electronics. And that's what, if you get nothing out of this whole podcast, the one thing that you have to always remember is you're buying electronics, and you have to shop electronics when you're buying lights the same way you shop buying stereos, the same way you shop buying vacuum cleaners or
Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, it's buyer beware, and you got to do your homework. Now, Lynn, if somebody's listening to the podcast or watching the video, how would they be able to reach you? Did you have a
um,
website?
I have a website. It is lpsgreen.com, and you can call me. My phone number's
Don't
on
yeah,
the
yeah, just your phone numbers. Yeah, I was gonna say don't put it on the thing. Your phone number's on the website.
it's on the website, and it has a little contact, so you can also email me. Um, and it's all on the website, lpsgreen.com.
Now, do you consult all over the country?
Usually, the answer to that is I don't really like to fly all over the country to consult. I can. I'm not. It's not something I like to do. I usually do consulting all over the state of Texas, Louisiana, and Oklahoma, which is an actual very large territory to cover.
Oh yeah,
So
that is a large territory.
Texas is bigger than France. So
And if you were to advise, here's I said it was my last question before, but if you were yeah, if you were to advise someone like you said, you're more Southwest, what should somebody look for in the way of someone like you? Like, if they want like the Lynn Schwartz that's in California, the Lynn Schwartz that's in the northern part, what kind of questions should somebody ask, do you think? To
well, I think what I would probably do is I would go to the small lighting houses, and I would start there and find out from them, who do they trust. And that's a big word for me, is trust. Um, Not who would they use, because a lot of people use people they don't trust, but they don't know anybody else to use. So I would use that word, who do you trust? And I would do that, and I would also go to, if you know people who are in the industry that are uh, doing retrofitting, that are actually looking at going in and doing energy audits and things like that, ask them who they trust, and find out from them. Generally, there are very few people like me in the country. Lighting people tend to handle all forms of light. So they will do incandescent and fluorescent and LED. I'm not a lighting expert. I'm an LED expert. So I tend to steer people more in that direction than not, just because I think that's really where the world is. But I don't always. Other people like me will kind of, lighting designers maybe would be a good person to ask. They do a lot of consulting, they can help you. And then those are usually listed in phone books. You can usually find in the Yellow Pages or something like that, a lighting designer. Um, and again, you have to buyer beware. Don't let anybody take you down a road. If it doesn't make sense, it probably doesn't make sense. Just don't let people convince you to do things based on well, this is green and all that other stuff. No, put pen to paper. Make sure it makes sense, dollars and cents. And then if it makes sense, dollars and cents, then go from there. Um, Otherwise, you have to have a specific reason to want to make that change. And as long as you know that, that's fine. But make sure that you have a specific reason to do it and that you're going to go that particular route. So if you want pretty light, you want your favorite painting to look better, um, whatever. Those are all very valid reasons. Just realize that there's got to be a reason to make the change um, if it doesn't make sense dollars and cent wise. And the only way it's going to really do that is an LED pays for itself over time. So if something says it's going to only last 20,000 hours versus something that lasts 40,000 hours, the LED is going to have a hard time paying for itself in 20,000 hours.
Right. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for your time and thanks for showing me your LEDs.
Sure.
This has been very eye-opening because, like I said before, the marketing hype, even someone like me who's a sustainability consultant, I know a lot, but there's a lot I don't know. And anybody tells you that they know a lot, and that's just not the case anymore. There's just too much hype. So it's been really refreshing to learn from you. You know, uh,
I
in,
hope it helps. I hope it helps. I think in the next, if you want to do LEDs, be patient. In the next 6 months to a year, the industry is going to be again to clean up itself, and a lot of the certifications and things are going to get more and more specific. And DOE is working on uh, a way to identify the difference between a quality LED and a not so quality LED. And a lot of the things you see in the marketplace are going to disappear. So I think it's going to happen over the next 6 months to a year. The industry is aware of the problems we face, and we're trying to figure out a way to do it without destroying the uh, capitalistic system, open market system, yada yada yada.
so it sounds like you and I are gonna have a podcast in about 6 months to a year when you're gonna tell me the new stuff that's out there and the more buyer beware. Lynn, it was a pleasure, and I know you and I will be talking offline because it's I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Good luck to everybody.